No doubt. My man, Dr. Seth Markle. It's good to have you here. Long overdue, my friend. You should have been on the show in the past. We've talked about it. I don't feel too bad, but I feel bad. But I'm glad we have you now. May not be on, on when you call, but always on time. Whatever. What's up, man? How you doing?
Yeah, it's good to see you again. I saw you last time at the Howard University second annual conference back in November 2024. So that was good opportunity, because I
Yeah.
hadn't seen each other in a long time. Yeah.
That's true. That's true. We did cross paths in the past, and then pandemic, the Thanos snap of humanity, took us out of the game for a minute. But I'm heartened, and I was heartened to see you. I was really excited to talk to you there, and why we're talking today is because the Trinity International Hip Hop Festival is still rocking, still back in action.
Still going.
So that's right. Let's start there, and then we'll backtrack a little bit. Find out how we get here, who you are, why we're even talking. But let's for right out of the gate let people know a little bit about the 19th annual. Right, this is the well, not annual. I think you might have missed a year, but 19th.
Yeah. We had a COVID year. We had to shut it
Yep.
down. So, but other than that, this is the 19th Trinity International Hip Hop Festival at Trinity College. It's considered a legacy event, one of these few events that's been around for almost 2 decades. But yeah, the 19th one, every year we have a theme. This year's theme is Hip Hop Saved My Life. I think you're seeing a lot of that lately with a lot of these hip hop gatherings where people are kind of approaching it from the healing, mental health, wellness angle. Appropriate time to continue that conversation in Hartford, Connecticut. So we have a really exciting lineup. Our co-headliners are Sky Zoo, Brooklyn, Atlanta based as Mecha Godzilla, New York. And then we have a lot of really great international special guests, Komachi and Asuka from Japan, Fumalad from Senegal. We got Heal the Hood, 3 representatives coming, including Emil YX from South Africa. And is that South Africa going? Yeah, South Africa, Senegal, so we're continue to represent. But, we got a full lineup. It starts on Thursday, April 17th, goes through Sunday, April 20th. And we're talking about a combination of performances, battles, panel discussions, lectures. Right. So we also got our keynote lecture from representing French Algeria, France. So you see that, we do a whole bunch of stuff, performances, battles, as well as film screenings. We're doing the hip hop art and activism, Chuck D with Professor H. Sami Alim, with the Q&A with Emil YXY from South Africa, Medusa representing Cali. So that's going to be real dope. So, at the end of the day, we're essentially featuring about 35 artists from representing all the elements of the culture, DJs, dancers, MCs, poets, everything, so it's like, and then the big thing is that for our 2 main performances, that means our main concert on Friday night, as well as our battle zone, the All Styles and Breaking Battle. The sound system is going to be provided by the legendary DJ Tony Crush of the Cold Crush Brothers. So, you know what I mean, man? I could talk about it for days. It's just so much. Well, but really excited to be doing this. The one difference than the previous festivals is that the previous festivals, we always held them on Trinity campus. This year, we're actually bringing it to the city. It's right in downtown, various locations throughout the city. There's stuff happening on campus, but as well as off campus, very centralized. So we wanted to do something a little bit different. When you get to 19, it's like, sometimes you start going through the motions and it's like, you got to kind of add a little twist to make it feel fresh. Yeah. And so at the end of the day, our festival, we have more folks from Hartford and the greater Northeast come to our festival than Trinity students. Like, let's just be real. You know what I mean? And so it's like, let's bring it to them, let's try that. Trinity students can go and all that. And we have lectures for them and we have artists going into the classes and things like that. But as far as these big performances, this is all Hartford and hip hop, so let's open it up more,
Yeah, very definitely so. And so the whole slew, the whole gamut, I love it because, festivals or conferences, sort of have their lanes. Trinity's been doing this for a long time. The international aspect is something you won't see in a lot of, other conferences and festivals. No shade, nothing wrong with everyone's in their lane and does important work. Like I said, we were at Howard, great stuff. Some international, representation there as well. And you'll get that in trickles in some of these places, but the focus has always been international.
Right.
How important it is to kind of maintain that and make sure that you are representing not just from locations but multi elements, right? All the elements of hip hop, something you also don't see across some of the other ones. How important is it to maintain that focus and maintain it 19 times?
Yeah, it's what makes our festival unique. It's what sets us apart. To my knowledge, we're still the only festival of its kind on a college, run through a college that has this international component to it. So by taking it away, then we're losing really a huge aspect of our identity. And then the other thing too is that, people at the end of the day are really kind of closed off to the world. And when we bring these artists from all over the world, we see our festival as also this space of convergence, because folks connect with each other from Russia and Senegal. And then all of a sudden I learned later that, I linked up with so-and-so, we met at the fest and we were collaborating and all these certain things. So it's a big component, because the international side of hip hop, yes, it does have this really sort of cutting edge kind of revolutionary element to it, because it's not as commodified and capitalized. A lot of folks abroad aren't going to be making $100,000 a year doing hip hop. You know what I mean? Like it is definitely like, you can make some money, but the folks that I know internationally have other gigs, right? That have nothing to do with the culture.
Not a lot of millionaire rappers across these.
When you have that situation, you have a different way that they look at the culture, different way they're invested. A lot of the folks that we bring are not just artists, they're educators, activists, involved in movements. So you'll see that they're multifaceted, multidimensional. They're not just performing. You'll see they're on panels because they can talk about this stuff from a kind of intellectual perspective. We're bringing this brother from Senegal who literally led a revolution, in Senegal, political prisoner, like it's just the stakes are a little bit higher, but through hip hop, using it as a tool for organizing. So we talk a lot about this as tool political education, but I'm like, internationally, we actually bring people who have been in prisons,
they walk
censored,
in that walk.
So there's a different element that I think people appreciate, because, our hip hop here, you still have that element in that culture of resistance and respecting all that. But the international, that I just think people appreciate the broader scope. It expands their consciousness and worldview for both sides. The city of Hartford loves it. That, oh man, we get to connect with all these folks that are coming in just to our city. They expected this type of festival to be in New York or LA. We're a little Hartford, which is an incredible hip hop city, which I hope we get to talk about. But that's the importance. So you have that principle, that international, but you also mentioned this other one, right? We also have this principle being multi-generational from the organizing on down. We're talking about first generation, 70s, all the way up to the present kids, who are going to be performing, who are 12, 13 years old. We want to make sure that element is there too. And then also too is that idea of, we got to make sure all these core elements of hip hop are represented, not just the five, but even with the entrepreneurship and style and all these other things. So we have a lot to try to, fulfill. But the biggest challenge, because we already experienced it, like the first Trump era made international hard. It kind of turned into diaspora. Sure. It kind of turned into folks who were already here. Yeah. And this year,
there were problems with, there questioned travel bans. Travel bans, it was very nerve wracking. Yeah, I remember. Yep.
And this administration is more intense than the last time. And so, we're trying to bring these brothers from South Africa. And right now, South Africa is in this targeted area of the government being like, we're expelled the ambassador. And I'm like, so, you know what I mean? Like, so we're crossing our fingers that,
it's harder than ever, but also more important than ever. But it's also more important than ever.
Yeah, exactly. So it makes it more. It's challenging more and more because of immigration policies in this country, making it hard for these artists, and some who can come, but like I don't want to get harassed, and so they're not even going to come on their own choice. I can come, but no, I don't want to. But I don't want to risk it. I get it too.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, as much as you can do this without, causing, any international, problems. But you mentioned it is so important. That's why I've always loved the festival. And I'd like to just say that, just to give, always give gratitude. When I started doing lectures and talks and kind of talking about my own independent scholarship in hip hop and my own journalism and how it relates to some of these things, Trinity Hip-Hop Festival was the very first of all the conferences and festivals that gave me a slot to come speak. And so I'm eternally got a place in my heart for y'all, man.
And I just saw your picture of you at the podium because I was going through archival pictures to fit you at our gallery, and I saw you up there at the podium. You got your jacket on, no hat, which is always
I know. No glasses either. That was before I wore glasses. Wild. Well, and I used that. That was like my only promo pic for a long time. The only place I was talking somewhere. So I do thank y'all for that.
And when you do 19 festivals, it's like you have these things where it's like that first generation, that first kind of 6 or 7 years of the festival were these sort of incubation for folks like yourself to go on to do these amazing things. You know what I mean? And Absolutely. I think as the festival has grown, we've grown with y'all too, because we bring back a lot of folks. Who have grown throughout the years, you know what I mean? So there is this really great connection to that.
Yeah, and I like I say, and I love the fact that younger folk that you concentrate on these intergenerational, but also different locations, because younger folk don't see this. They don't get to see this sort of thing that often. They don't see international hip hop. Older folk, we forget. We're very I don't know if you've heard, the United States is very U.S. centric. we tend to be, even the best among us, tend to be a little bit more forgetful. That hip hop, I often say this about your point about, how it still has a different vibe overseas, even though we exported it, right? We created it, we exported it, and that's great. But we also need to re-import some of the things, that it's continued to do or that it's evolved to elsewhere, because there are those examples of real political movement, of real social, messaging that other areas have done very well. And because of the corporatization of it, like you mentioned, we forget how to do it. We know it exists. We don't get to see it. So it's super important for all of the reasons you mentioned to have all of these things under one roof. And it's just valuable. Yeah.
100%. And while we suffer from that capitalism part out there, they're suffering more from the kind of dependency on NGOism. And so even when you're seeing now, you're going to see big shifts, not only in the hip hop community here, but internationally with what we have with all this pulling of USAID funding. And because you have a lot of those things that are funding these movements.
Yeah. I mean, very often you hear about, embassies or, from different countries hosting hip hop events. We know the Next Level program, for example, they might be,
No, they're done. No, they're just done. You know what I mean? I already talked to someone on it and I was like, yo, what's up? And they're like, yo, So we need to go back to being like, we can't be relying on these things, right? Like we can't 100%. Be like, we've gotten comfortable with all this, we're able to translate the language, now we can, and now we can use the institution to get, we got to go back to the source, to quote McCall Cabral, return to the source, right? And kind of do things off of making the stuff out of nothing, relying on each other. I mean, we're talking about an era where they're banning black businesses and black and brown businesses from, because it falls under DEI. So what does that mean for us, right? And hip hop should ask those questions. Although we're asking those questions at our fest, it is connected to how are we doing up here? Because I think a lot of people are stressed, right? Yeah. Super stressed. And so how can we create a space for at least 4 days to get people to commune, build, and that's where we see at least 4 days of like positive energy is always good.
Yeah. Little hope, little value, little connections to be made. Because again, many of these folks are doing grassroots. They are doing, on the ground, and, being amongst those folks, we're going to get some of that inspiration that, we don't see every day because we are caught up in the systems that we have been working with. But nothing can, listen, I don't think anything can do it better than hip hop. So if anyone if any folk got a chance to flip this around and, I don't know, help save America, I should have a podcast that's called that or something. And of course, people always come up to me and say, it could save the world too. I'm like, I know. That's the next podcast. I own that domain name, so I got you. Talk about bringing it out to the community. I think that's actually one way. I'm now thinking about this as we talk. That's actually one way to help, in these troubling times when we can't rely on the institutions that we've always had one foot in and one foot out. But bringing it back to the community gives us an opportunity to bring it back to the people. Right. and very often even the people in the community. I mean, how many, you probably could attest to this, that a bunch of people in Hartford for a bunch of years probably didn't even know that you got this wonderful festival happening right here on the college campus. Like, they just don't know. Sometimes those trains don't meet, but bringing it out in front of their faces is probably another way to get that message out back to the people that no, hip hop does this sort of thing. And if you want to, help relieve some of the stresses that you're talking about, hip hop is a viable angle for mental health, for, community, and for activism. Yeah.
Right. 100%. And we also make sure that throughout the festival, sure, we have people, a lot of performances with paid artists, right? But at the same time too, we make sure to cultivate spaces for like open mic. Anyone can come through, you know what I mean, and make a beat. Here's the beat making section over here. Here's the round, you know what I mean? Like, here's some spray paint cans if you want to come to our Get Up graffiti showcase for folks who, you know what I mean? So we don't make it all just like, you got to be at this level. It's also people are at various levels. You got people who are amateurs to up and coming to professionals, right? So so that
the true cipher,
who are willing to teach, like, and that's the key thing with the festival, is that this is different. One of the hardest things is booking for this festival, because people see Trinity College, elite white school. What do you mean you're only offering me this much? You know what I mean?
Good point.
Right? Yeah. You know what I mean? I have to kind of intervene, like, yo, this is a very different type of thing. It's not just a college gig. You come and a bunch of kids drunk, fraternities and sororities. Like, that's not it. They'll come if they know who you are. But if they don't know, and that's a very limited number, because they know like 10 artists, you know what I mean? And so it's very hard to get Trinity students there unless they know the headliner.
Right.
For us, though, we can't afford headliners that they would know. That would take our whole budget. And so we get, and then also we do have this messaging and framework. We want somebody, it's not saying that you can't cuss or say negative things, but you got to kind of be up in there and saying something and have some sort of artistic talent, right? But where I was going with that, sorry, with a large circle, is that by having it on campus, Trinity, this lead institutions, and some of the reasons why maybe Hartford didn't go is they maybe didn't know about it, but also Trinity is right in the middle of a Black and brown community that average income is $19,000 a year. That school was if you go to that school, you're going to be policed if you walk through campus. Like, so the perception of Trinity is like, oh, that's not for me. I'm not welcome there. Even though we say free to the public, come on, everybody. They're like, I'm not going to that college because Campo security might do this, that, and the third. These are certain things that we've seen, even though it's maybe not true. And people realize that when they come, like, oh, it was real cool and Campo security wasn't harassing us or anything like that. But it's still that perception that's been there since the college been there. I mean, 100 years or whatever, 50 years, last 50 years when it started changing the neighborhood. So, so by bringing it to places that they know, oh, downtown, I know where that is, Ballroom, or I know where this is and that. And so it changes people to be like, have more incentive to say like, oh, this is really for us.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Again, to see some of the performers specifically, I mean, first of all, Skyzoo is one of the, the elite wordsmiths of our day. Mecha Godzilla, and I go back decades. That's my guy. I literally just talked to him last night. It was super great to see him. Yeah. This is a world traveling MC too, that's done a bunch of different styles and vibes and worked with a lot of people, and has such a great, spirit, about him, that I couldn't have asked for a better headliner, even if they don't know who he is. They gonna know. They're gonna find out. They're gonna know. And he's the one who, and both Skyzoo and Mecha Godzilla, because we do this other thing. It doesn't appear on the schedule because it's a kind of invite only, but we do a thing called Youth for Change workshops. So Youth for Change workshops is that our performers come. But they also do workshops for high school and middle school age kids, right? Skyzoo is doing a really dope workshop on the art of storytelling and talking about how he wrote songs to the TV show Snowfall, right? Snowfall, that's right. Yeah, brilliant.
Right? So dope. So he's doing that with a bunch of folks that we work with, with a person that we work with out of the Nation of Islam in Hartford, and he works with a whole bunch of youth. And then Mecha Godzilla is working with a youth organization called U Media to do a beat making workshop at the Hartford Public Library. So they're doing these mini workshops, you know what I mean? And it's great
not
because
just coming
not just coming to sound like, yeah, man, make sure you have my herbal tea, in the green room. You know what I mean? Like, they are like, yo, whatever you want me to do, what do you want me to do? We want to do this. And these folks, I think, understand the educational element of hip hop, the knowledge sharing part of hip hop. And so it's just makes it even more It allows folks to really get to know the artist. So the way we're setting up this time is that we have the performance main concert on Friday, and then Saturday, these artists are going to be around the next day, all day on panels and da 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 da. So I think it was going to create a different dynamic.
That's dope. And they're approachable. Like that's a
the
good
other
thing too. Like you get, yeah. That's fantastic. So yeah, again, panel discussions. Again, just going back to the theme.
Yep.
The idea of healing, the idea of hip hop as a tool for, upliftment of spirit and soul, not just, enjoyment and happiness and that you get from the music and the artistic.
Yeah.
For lay folk, for folk who don't necessarily understand that there's that powerful connection of hip hop as a healing force. What are some of the, the foci of the conference in making those connections to folks who do know, but also some folks who might not be as familiar?
Yeah, 100%. So, we kick off our festival with a keynote lecture. You were one. We usually have that on a Thursday during a thing on Trinity campus called Common Hour. And that means Tuesday, Thursday, 12 to 1:30, everybody's kind of free to go to these larger lecture discussions. So we're bringing a really great PhD scholar. Her name is Celine Mitchell. She's getting a PhD at the London School of Economics in the UK in international history. But her thesis is about hip hop's connection to French Algerian youth in France. And so her lecture, which is going to be great, is called Rhymes of Resistance, French Algerian Hip Hop and the Legacy of Historical Trauma. So if people don't know that Algeria, got independence through an armed revolution, right? But you still have a lot of French Algerian immigrants in Paris who are still sort of going under a lot of marginalization and oppression, but have this memory. So she's exploring that memory of that revolutionary moment in the 60s and how this new hip hop generation is dealing with what we call, I guess, historical trauma, but it's also trauma that gets passed down generationally. Your parents are traumatized, that can traumatize you and down, right? And so these kids are suffering from trauma, but using hip hop as a way to deal with that, explore that past, explore those demons, explore all these sort of things. So she's really coming to do that. That kicks off that idea of historical, of healing, right? How do we engage with our own historical traumas as a community and even individually? Right. So that's one thing. We have this other element in terms of the major academic stuff. We do have a panel discussion called Hip Hop Heals, featuring Skyzoo, Mecha Godzilla, Komachi from Japan, and Fumalad from Senegal. And the person who's moderating that is the director of the Trinity College Health and Wellness Center, who also happens to be the co-founder of Trinity Chapter at Temple of Hip Hop in 2006. You know what I mean? Now she's a social worker practitioner. So, you know what I mean? And still a hip hop head, still sings.
Of course. That's bringing the worlds together.
You know what I mean? She still sings. She did a session with us in the fall with Temple of Hip Hop on singing as a way to deal with stress, because she's an amazing singer. And so she's going to be running about Hip Hop Heals. And all of these people on this panel have explored hip hop healing power in various different ways, right? Through their practitioners. You have Fumalad, who's created this amazing center around civic engagement in the hoods of Dakar. You have Skyzoo, who does a whole bunch of things with young people and dealing with Black fatherhood, right? You have Mecha Godzilla with the next level. Komachi, who's from Japan, is a founder of the first hip hop school in Japan. You know what I mean? And so these things, I think, all speak to this idea of health and wellness, community building. And then, of course, we have the film, Hip Hop Art and Activism, 50 Years of Hip Hop, and looking at its connection to agency, of course. So with Professor Alim, from UCLA, and one of the producers of the film, and then that panel discussion with the three folks on there. And so we were very intentional about that academic component, and then just this broad celebration of hip hop, because you're going to see beat makers, beats. And when we do the beat showcase, it's not just, hey, here's my beats. It's more of like themes of like 5 beat makers play us a beat that's classic boom bap. Play us a beat that you feel like that you made during a time of stress. Yeah, man, I got one of those.
Right.
plays the
Yep.
beat. You know what I mean? So these are the ways that we're pursuing this theme and trying to make this thread,
Yeah.
around that. And then, of course, we have our Get Up Graffiti Showcase
Right.
with 4 amazing graffiti writers, including the legendary Bomb 5 from New York City and Dulio from New Haven. If folks don't know, only if folks really know, if you know, right? Dulio from Connecticut, New Haven,
Right.
legendary B-boy. But they're going to be doing, we're holding the Get Up Graffiti Showcase at the Charter Oak Boxing Academy. You know what I'm saying? So this is a community boxing academy. They were like, yes, and they have walls. And so we're doing thematic graffiti pieces around there. And those graffiti pieces you can actually see from the highway, the 84 going across. So we're going to have these pieces up. Yeah. So, so you can see that's how we're pursuing that,
I love intersections that, we wouldn't expect. That's makes me happy.
Yeah.
Yeah. But of course it makes sense.
Yeah. Cause hip hop too, physical being, and then our battle, of course. The battle zone, I mean, it's all about physical well-being, physical fitness. When you watch these guys spinning on their heads, flipping, I mean, it's just like, you realize like, I can't do that. And it puts a lot of practice in that. And that's so that's how we're pursuing it, health and wellness, all that good stuff.
That's what's up. How, real quick before I'll let you go. I know you have a lot of prepping to do. I know it's weeks away, but
it's
still
getting close.
Just real talk about, again, Hartford, the community, the city, bringing it out to the people. But you did mention, Hartford has a hip hop scene of itself, as every, city does. What do you see around the city, generally speaking? Why is Hartford just a good place for this sort of vibe to begin with?
Yeah. And I know you were a part of this conference where I presented a little bit on the Hartford hip hop collection that I've been working on, where we're really trying to unpack the history of hip hop in Hartford. One of the biggest things is that Hartford is 2 hours away from New York City. And because of the large Puerto Rican population here in Hartford, you actually had people who were like, my dad lived in the Bronx, my mom lived in Hartford. On the weekends, I'd be on 174th and da-da-da. So they were bringing hip hop over to Hartford in real time. There was a Ghetto Brothers chapter in Hartford.
Interesting.
Do you understand what I'm saying? They were salsa battling in the streets in the 70s before you know what I mean? So it's like, it's deep and it has Zulu Nation roots. It has, going back to the 80s and 90s. So it's just was this place that have these strong origins in hip hop. It's a small city enough where it's all immigrants, black and brown. It's a poor city. And they were just able to create a lot of community events. I mean, it lives off of small community events, from battles to showcases, open mics. They're always doing it. And when I moved here in 2009 and I linked up with the organizer who had the Zulu Nation chapter there at the time, and he introduced me to the scene, and I couldn't believe it. And I was like, this is every weekend?
Right.
So we got this battle.
You don't think about it. You don't think about it. And where'd you move from?
New York City.
That's what I'm saying. Like, we were like, this is like, y'all actually doing something that, isn't here. Yeah.
So I was like, I just started documenting it,
I don't know if you ever heard this about New Yorkers, but New Yorkers are very New York centric.
So, so I'm just saying, like, I was like, wow, they actually live and breathe hip hop. I traveled with 3 Hartford hip hop artists to Russia as part of an exchange program. I was with these guys for 3 weeks, and I preached 2 weeks there, and I appreciated like, oh, these guys live hip hop. I mean, these guys are battling in the airport lobby, dancing. I'm like, whoa, y'all ever turn this off? You know what I mean?
I'm about to say.
And that's the city they're from. So
absolutely,
you know what I mean? So it's not a thing to be like, we're doing some hip hop here and instead, like, it's in the whole consciousness of this city, and people will turn out once they know about what's happening, and because they do breathe hip hop, especially with the dance and the graffiti. Our B-boy event, B-girl event is huge.
Yeah, no, that's great. And again, when you live in the shadow of New York City, I grew up on Long Island. Same thing. I mean, Long Island hip hop history is deep and amazing, but it's different. It's just a little bit. It's got its own sort of vibe and its own history. Yonkers, I talked to my man Andrew Wang from the 914 hip hop and the 914, and there's such a deep history that comes from these places. And again, you'd find this probably in every city, in the country. But to have that pride of that history in your town, to know that you were doing things like I said, in real time at the same time, and putting your own spin on it, your own twist on it, like that's absolutely should be documented and archived and recorded for posterity
forever. It's a local hip
Yeah.
hop scene. It's vibrant. It's rich. It's ever changing.
All hip hop is local.
Yeah, all hip hop is local, right? But we
Like
still,
all politics are
but we
local,
know,
right?
hip hop studies still has got a lot of work to do, when it comes to uncovering a lot of these things and looking at other elements than rap and things like that. But you are seeing this archival movement of people like, we got to start documenting these histories.
Do you have like physical like archive?
Yeah, we're building the Hartford Hip-Hop Digital Collection. We're specifically housing it in the Hartford Public Libraries. It's not going to be like at Trinity in our private collections. Right. It's like people can go access.
Accessible.
It's going to be both physical and digital. And we're working on it. I'm basically doing a lot of oral histories, right? I'm just slowly collecting them, and I'm going to, and we're donating them. But it has the richest thing in there now are these hundreds of photographs from the 80s, because they had for 2 years, they had a big breaking competition statewide, and it was held in Hartford. And it was like over
the height of that,
and so the great pictures of kids, dancing in outfits from the 80s style, and Kangos and Adidas shell toes, and all that. So that's a really rich, and we're actually exhibiting those photos in our gallery part of our festival, where they're going to see photos from the Hartford Hip Hop Digital Collection, as well as photos from the history of the Hip Hop Fest.
That's what's up.
So I don't think this festival would survive if it wasn't for Hartford holding it up, because we also work with Hartford hip hop artists as organizers. For people who don't know, the festival is organized by students of the Trinity Chapter Temple of Hip Hop, and they're surrounded by mentors, community partners, 5 of them, myself as a faculty advisor, and then we have our spiritual advisor from the National Temple of Hip Hop, Minister Sturver, out of Atlanta. So it is a community.
It's my neighbor now.
Right, and it is a community, and you'll see that we hit all the generations.
Yeah,
from Gen whatever to Gen X, Gen whatever Z to millennials.
And I remember being there and like just in like the gymnasium in between sessions, like just dancing, breakings going on, and it's kids. It's people bringing their kids there, and there's little kids part of it from and I loved it. Or maybe it was a DJ battle. I think maybe I had at one point. Yeah. And but there's kids over here rocking to the mute, and I'm like, this is just great.
Yeah, this is
it's all elements, all generations, all the things that some folk, even again amongst our own, forget still exists.
Right.
We're still a little jaded, so it's really great to see it all in one place.
Yeah, and it's also this opportunity, since we were there at Howard, been working with Professor Clark, where for I think going for about 5 years now, she brings her Howard University students up to the fest each year. Who take her hip hop class.
She mentioned when I interviewed her for this show, she mentioned she's like, I love going there, especially and she's very international. She loves that aspect of it. So, and that's so valuable. Yeah.
So these connections are great to make these links with other conferences and things like that is where we kind of want to move to when we think, where do we want the next 10 festivals to go? Number 20 is going to be great. We're bringing back a lot of like past featured folks like yourself. You know what I mean? Like, it's going to be really great it's going to be a kind of like a reunion of sorts. We're going to bring like the original founder of the festival back, and all these cats that kind of held it up in those first 5 or 6 years. I've only been part of 10.
20's big.
Yeah, 20's big, and we want to get there. Yeah. So it's going to be great.
Very cool. So again, community, all ages,
free,
academics, free, but also artists, all throughout the city, but also at the college, panels, but also competitions, concerts, but also, one-on-one with artists, everything going on.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So please, if you're hearing this, is this going to be aired before the fest?
Oh, well, yeah, absolutely. 100%.
Oh, great. Yeah. There is a registration page. I think the best thing is Instagram at Trinity Hip Hop is the best place for all the information that can take you to web pages and links and things like that. But there's a registration page. It's a free concert, but if you register, you'll get a little something. I can tell you what.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Little bonus.
Yeah, bonus
Little
in there
bonus
for putting your name in there and being on the list.
Registration's always good. It's like I got a book coming out. I'm
Yeah,
like pre-buy that thing too. Like, it helps. That's dope. Very cool. Let me just, before I let you go, ask just real quick, like, what you're working on.
Yeah.
I know that you're working on the archives, but as a professor, as a faculty member, and whatever else you might want the people to know about your work, please.
Oh yeah, sure. I my book's not done yet, but I'm a professor of history and international studies. I consider myself someone who comes out of the Black radical tradition. So I didn't get into academia and hip hop. I'm a hip hop guy who happens to be a professor, right? But because of the International Hip Hop Festival and working with Trinity students, I kind of got into hip hop studies. Right. Yep. I kind of went in there because I've traveled a lot to Africa, East Africa, and I was part of the Tanzanian hip hop scene since 2003. So I'm writing a travel story about the 20 years of being in this hip hop movement in Tanzania, because I was in and out from 2002 up until 2024 as an organizer, as a researcher, as a documenter. I have all of this stuff that I've collected over 20 years. So it's like a travel narrative written in the tradition of African-American travel writing to Africa. It's a mixed media presentation. There's a website, it's an archive. It's a mixed multimedia project. Yeah. So that's what I'm working on now. I'm in the writing stages now of actually writing the actual story. I kept journals, diaries of just over the years of just me being a documenter. And then I was like, this is what I want to write about. And the reason why I do is because I think I have issues with academic writing on hip hop.
As we all do.
There's a couple of things that end up happening where, given the contingencies within academia and what scholars need to do to keep their jobs and get promoted, and who's evaluating their books and their work, it makes it very difficult for academic scholars in hip hop to not go in that direction of making something inaccessible, whether it's using high language, high theoretical, whether it's going over theorizing and over theorizing with theorists who didn't care anything about hip hop. There's a whole bunch of issues that I have, and I respect high theory stuff, meta stuff. I can get into that. That's cool. But
I get it.
But for hip hop, I don't know. Sometimes I'm just kind of like, whatever, I'm not really interested in this. So how do we make this accessible? How do we make a genre that can't fit into a certain academic discipline? So I'm just trying to explore a way to do something that I'm invested in. I don't want to make it academic. I want to make it a story, but also I want to make it a history of this movement that I've been a part of for 20 years. And it's about artists that you'll never know about. It's really about an underground scene. It's about connections. It's about acceptance. It's about strangeness of hip hop there versus the lens that I came with. And so it's called Hip-Hop Travels, notes on, no, I don't have the second part of the title. Hip-Hop Travels right
notes
now.
On,
yeah.
Yeah,
Hip-Hop Travels, but that's what I'm working on now. But it is a multimedia amazing project. Yeah.
Yeah, I look forward to it.
No doubt.
Like I said, I haven't gone around the world that much. The times that I have almost exclusively been because of hip hop, either covering Le Original Festival in Lyon, going to Norway for a hip hop theater festival called Speaker Box.
Right.
And that perspective, I'm a son of a sociologist,
right?
So
I
gravitate towards these thoughts, but I love just being there, hearing it, seeing it, feeling it, tasting it, touching it. And that doesn't have to be, buried in jargon and academic text. I would just want to, but it's just as valuable. It's just as valuable.
Academic. It's just as valuable, 100%. But, we can get into a whole thing, but I tend to follow these scholars who are really talking about like the hip hop studies doesn't have these gatekeepers, right? You can be kind of any scholar and you can pick up hip hop and then you're writing about it and then you're becoming an authority. So we're still got a lot to do in that field.
Yeah.
But we are seeing shifts in the academia. Like I'm Generation X guy and you're seeing people come up, doing rap albums, like, you know what I mean? For dissertations, like, so things are changing, things are moving, which is really great.
As they should. Like I said, we always want we want more practitioners in the halls of look. I'm a premier independent scholar, sir. I ain't got no degree, but I'm one of the ones fighting for that same kind of thing. But also, like, how many people we see and know that are just brilliant and have so much to offer, but like you say, there's a lot of hoops that unnecessary hoops that need to be jumped through.
Dilutes the end product too, and so there is, so it is. I love the good fight too. We all need that. But for me, I really wanted to write something that's more personal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so
I look forward to it, man. And like I said, it's always me personally. I love seeing those perspectives because the way that hip hop is valued around the world, again, helps remind us how to value hip hop, because, it's just another way to remember that this beautiful thing that, that exists, is beautiful and has all that depth. And stories like yours are going to help remind us that. So
So can I ask you one question? Just reverse real quick.
Flip it around.
I want to flip it around real quick.
Put the microphone down.
But one of the things that we are doing, and you'll see in our promotion leading up, next week, is that we're having people offer some short sound bites on how hip hop healed you at a certain time, and that could be a song that makes you think, that got you through a tough time, or makes you memorialize someone you cared about. I was hoping you could maybe share for your audience of like hip hop heals. Is there a song that you would recommend, or a song that just, that maybe was in high school?
Sure. There's probably songs. Yeah. I mean, they take me back to times, right?
Yeah.
So it's not that it would make me feel, but it would bring me back to that time of, happiness or sadness or whatever. But I will say, I'm, as much as you are in some heads, just really into everything, the everythingness of it. There's been no time. I'll just give you this. I remember I used to make beats. I was a producer. I've done remixes and such, and I still DJ. So I was going through a terrible breakup or whatever it is, and I was so kind of forlorn and, depressed and in my, just quiet. And my brother from another mother was living with me at the time, and my mother lived there. And from what I hear, because they told me this, a couple of days had passed, and then through the, up in my bedroom, you could hear the, little muffled bass drum as I got back to making music. And my mother turned to my brother and said, "He's back." Because I could get out of it through the music. She knew I was coming out of it because it brings me out. It was bringing me out, and it was giving me something, my joy back, which at the time was absolute beat making. I'm 24/7. And I didn't even want to do that. You're so depressed. You don't even want to do the thing you love, but you start doing the thing you love because it brings you out of that depression. So not a song, but a moment, making beats and doing that, doing my thing, 100%. And DJs will talk about that too. Catharsis, just spin music, just play music. And
I'm a black book graffiti writer. When I'm stressed out or feeling anxious, I do a piece. Deal. You know what I mean? Like,
that's it. So you get it. So it's definitely, as a practitioner, and people get it from listening. You don't have to be a practitioner. You get that joy from, like you said, your favorite songs or your favorite artists. But for me, I was a practitioner, and that brought me out. So we all say it saved our lives, or it shaped our lives, or it definitely has enhanced life in ways that are immeasurable to me. Some of which I talk about in my book, but some of which I don't. And so that's a great prompt, and I'm sure you're going to get an amazing amount of responses.
Yeah, I'm sure. We're looking forward to this kind of dialogue that we create through this space.
Yeah, I welcome everybody who's listening or watching to, contribute to that. Even if you're not going, if you can't make it to the festival, please do contribute your thoughts to this. It's a beautiful prompt, and it just, again, having these things just spoken out loud, right, put out into the universe, keeps it alive. If you love hip hop, if you love what hip hop can do, if you know what hip hop can do to make the world better, to save America, to save the world, to heal ourselves, to heal our family, to heal our communities, spread the word. Tell Trinity all about it. They'll be happy to hear it. And sir, this sounds like a great thing. I wish it was in the cards that I could be there this time, but I have already blocked off the
2026.
26, 20 year. I'm there. We'll make it happen. We'll make it work.
It's right around the corner. I always tell students it's right around the corner. They think, hey, you did it. And I'm like, yo, summertime, we got to start thinking about a lineup.
That's right. That's right.
All right, man.
All right. Anything else that comes up, obviously, let me know. I'll spread the word. We'll have this in the newsletter. We'll let everyone see this. And I thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
And,
I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. I appreciate your doing this, and shouts to everyone involved. All right.
Peace.
Thanks, man. We'll talk.
All right.
Manny Faces.
You sick for this one. Sick for this one. Sick for